Welcome to the Fundamentals of ISO 9001 e-course, Module 2. I'm Greg Peckford, founder of QualityCareerAdvancement.com. In the previous module, you were given an introduction to the ISO 9000 family and its benefits. We also discussed the 8 quality management principles that form the foundation of the ISO 9001 standard, the 6 required procedures, and the importance ISO places on a process approach. In this module, we will take a detailed look at clauses 1 through 6 of the ISO 9001 standard. Those clauses are scope, normative references, terms and definitions, quality management, management responsibility, and resource management. So let's take a closer look at the first clause, which defines the scope of the standard itself, as specifying the requirements for a quality management system that enables an organization to demonstrate its ability to consistently provide a product that meets customer and regulatory requirements, and aims to enhance customer satisfaction through the effective application of the system. This is not to be confused with the scope of a quality management system itself, which should be based on the nature of the organization's products and their realization processes, the result of risk assessment, commercial considerations, and contractual, statutory, and regulatory requirements. Also, an organization is not required to include all of the products or services that it provides within the scope of its QMS, nor is it required to include the realization processes for those products or services that are not included within its QMS. However, this limited scope must be clearly defined and documented for internal and public awareness. There are 2 subclauses under this section which define the scope in more detail. They are general and application. Subclause 1.1 General specifies the requirements for a quality management system that needs to demonstrate the ability to consistently provide product or service that meets requirements, and also aims to enhance customer satisfaction through the effective application of the system, continuous improvement of the system, as well as assurance of its conformity to requirements, whether they be customer, regulatory, or statutory requirements. Section 1.2 Application highlights the broad range and flexibility of the ISO 9001 standard, stating that all requirements of the standard are generic and applicable to all organizations regardless of type, size, or product and service offered. The section on application also describes what I mentioned previously regarding exclusion of requirements that are not applicable under the organization's scope of product or service, and any claims an organization makes of conformity to the standard are only acceptable if those exclusions are limited to Clause 7, product realization, and do not in any way affect its ability to meet requirements. Again, this limitation only applies if an organization is certified or wishes to obtain certification to ISO 9001, and not simply basing the structure of its QMS on the standard as a guideline. We will not spend too much time on the next 2 clauses of the ISO 9001 standard, as they simply point us to the reference document ISO 9000, Quality Management System Fundamentals and Vocabulary, which contain terms and definitions used throughout the standard. I will mention one important point, and that is throughout the standard, when the term product is used, it also refers to service. Not all organizations produce a physical product, but may provide a service to its customers. However, the standard still applies. Beginning with Clause 4, Quality Management Systems, is really where the meat of the standard begins, and where we will really get into the applicable requirements. The 2 main subclauses of Section 4 are the general requirements and documentation requirements. An organization must establish, document, implement, and maintain a quality management system, and also take steps to continually improve it in accordance with the requirements of the ISO 9001 standard. Organizations must identify the processes needed in order to effectively implement a quality management system. They must document those processes and ensure they are effective. Identification and availability of resources must be ensured to adequately support the operation of processes, as well as monitor and measure the processes where applicable. And of course, it is required that the organization maintain results and take steps to continually improve processes as well as the system as a whole. ISO 9001 places a strong emphasis on documentation requirements when it comes to establishing and maintaining a quality management system. An organization must establish and document a quality policy and objectives to show its commitment to the processes and system it has put in place. A quality manual, documented procedures and records that are required by the ISO 9001 standard, and documents and records that are required by the organization for effective planning, operation, and control of the system. A quality manual must be developed and maintained by the organization in order to define the scope of the QMS, including details pertaining to any exclusions and the justification for those exclusions. This goes back to what we covered in Section 1, which discussed the requirements for defining and documenting the scope of an organization's QMS. The Quality Manual is the main document that would hold this information, among other places. Also in the Quality Manual, an organization must at a minimum make reference to the documented procedures that have been established for the QMS. Some organizations incorporate the full content of these procedures as part of the Quality Manual. However, this is dependent on the size of the QMS and number of procedures established. The Quality Manual must also describe the interaction between processes of the quality management system. It is entirely up to the discretion of management to determine how its Quality Manual is structured, and depends largely on the size and function of the organization. This next section is the first of the 6 required procedures that we discussed in Module 1. An organization is required to develop a documented procedure to define just how documents required by the QMS will be controlled. At a minimum, this procedure must include the following topics, and provide instruction and guidelines that meet the requirements of the organization and that the information contained in these documents is controlled. Approval of documents. Who is responsible for this approval and how does the process work? Document review, update, and revision. How does the organization ensure that documents are current and relevant to how the organization conducts its business, and how are those revisions managed? How does the organization ensure that these documents are available at point of use, so that the people doing the work have access to the information they need when they need it? It's one thing to have well-controlled and written documentation, but if it's not available to the people that need it the most, then it's not effective. An organization must control not only its own documentation, but all the documents that come from an external origin that have relevance to the quality management system. This could be vendor documentation or regulatory, for example. How are they identified and distributed within the organization? And last but certainly not least, an organization must maintain control over all obsolete and superseded documents. Once a document becomes obsolete, how is it controlled? How does the organization prevent unintended use of such documents? Another special form of documentation that an organization is required to control are records. Control of records is the second of the 6 required procedures that an organization must have as part of its QMS. This procedure must establish controls needed for records identification, storage, protection, retrieval, retention, and disposition. The next clause of the standard, Clause 5, deals with the responsibility of management to the development and implementation of the quality management system. It is imperative that top management commit and strive to continually improve its effectiveness. Management must provide the appropriate guidance and resources necessary and promote the importance and culture of a QMS through example and leadership. In this section, we will cover the essential topics such as management commitment, focusing on the customer and their needs, development of a quality policy, planning, responsibility, authority, and communication, and management review. All levels of management must be committed and involved in the implementation and improvement of an organization's QMS in order for the processes and procedures to be effective and encourage buy-in from all personnel. Management must communicate the importance of meeting customer and regulatory requirements, establish a quality policy and objectives that are relevant and meaningful to the organization's activities and reflect its commitment. Management must conduct periodic reviews of the system and its associated processes to ensure they remain effective, and to ensure that the appropriate resources are available. Management must focus not only on internal needs and responsibilities within its own organization, but most importantly on the customer's needs, and ensure that client requirements have been determined in order to ultimately meet those needs and requirements, in an effort to maintain customer satisfaction. It's very important to make those determinations up front, so that a clear understanding of the customer requirements has been achieved and that adequate attention has been given to those requirements. Management must also develop a clear quality policy in order to convey internally and to the client that the organization promotes a quality culture and aims to achieve customer satisfaction. The quality policy should be appropriate to the purpose of the organization and show management's commitment to comply with the requirements as well as continuous improvement efforts. It should also provide a framework for the development and review of quality objectives. This review process is ongoing, and the objectives should evolve with the organization. This policy must be documented, communicated, and understood within the organization, posted or distributed as required to ensure everyone in the organization is aware and on the same page with management's commitment. And of course, the quality policy should be reviewed periodically to ensure it reflects the direction and culture of the organization over time. A policy could easily become stale and obsolete if not reviewed and updated as required. Another very important responsibility of an organization's top management team involves planning. A key step in the planning stage, as mentioned in Clause 5.3, Quality Policy, is to ensure that quality objectives have been established that are consistent to the organization's scope of business and quality commitment. These objectives must also be measurable and relevant to the established functions and levels within the organization in order to be effective. In order to ensure that an effective and achievable plan has been established for the organization's quality management system, top management must ensure that quality management system planning is sufficient to meet the general requirements of Clause 4.1 of ISO 9001, and that any changes are planned and implemented while maintaining the integrity of the quality management system. Now let's take a look at responsibility, authority, and communication. Another required function of top management, according to Clause 5.5 of the ISO 9001 standard, is to ensure responsibility and authority has been clearly defined and communicated throughout the organization. On top of this, a management representative must be appointed to ensure processes have been established, implemented, and adequately maintained. This appointed individual must report to top management on the overall effectiveness and performance of the quality management system and any necessary improvements. The management representative must also promote the awareness of organizational as well as client requirements throughout the organization. Communication within an organization from all levels is vital to ensure an effective quality management system, and it is the responsibility of top management to ensure appropriate communication processes are established. Having processes in place to manage and communicate an effective quality management system is one thing, but equally important is the process for review and evaluation. Management must perform periodic reviews of the organization's quality management system at planned intervals. The purpose of this review process is to ensure continued suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the QMS. Management shall assess opportunities for improvement and the necessity for change. This process must also include the organization's quality policy and objectives. Required inputs for such a review shall include audit results, customer feedback, results of past reviews, process performance, and product or service conformity. Desired outputs from management reviews shall focus on the identification and improvements to the QMS and provisions for adequate resources. Now that we have discussed the processes required for planning, implementing, and review of the quality management system, Clause 6 guides us through the requirements for resource management. This section focuses on providing trained and responsible personnel, along with the tools, environment, and resources to meet quality and organizational objectives. In this section, we will take a look at provisions of resources, human resources, infrastructure, and work environment. Organizations must determine and provide the adequate resources required to implement and maintain the QMS, continually improve its effectiveness, and enhance customer satisfaction by meeting requirements. Organizations must ensure that all personnel performing work at any level of the quality management system that has a direct or indirect effect on product quality and conformity to requirements are competent on the basis of education, training, skills, and experience. Competency requirements must be established for personnel performing activities which have an effect on product conformity. Training must be provided or other necessary actions taken in order to meet those predetermined competency requirements. And perform evaluation to ensure the effectiveness of actions taken or training provided. All personnel must be made aware of the relevance and importance of activities and how their efforts affect the established quality objectives. Records must also be maintained for the purpose of providing proof of education, training, skills, and experience. Along with personnel, organizations are required to determine, provide, and maintain adequate infrastructure necessary to provide product or service conformity. This infrastructure includes buildings, workspace, and associated utilities, process equipment such as hardware and software, and any required support service such as transportation, communication, or information systems. Work environment relates to conditions for which work is performed, including physical, environmental, and other factors such as noise, temperature, humidity, lighting, and weather. All of these factors must be taken into consideration and managed within the quality management system. Organizations must determine and manage the required work environment needed to achieve conformity to requirements in order to maintain product quality, personnel work environment, and regulatory requirements. So that concludes Module 2, ISO 9001 Clauses 1 through 6. In the next lesson, Module 3, we will discuss Clauses 7 and 8, Product Realization, and Measurement, Analysis, and Improvement. See you in the next video.